You're on.
We're on. So Late Night from Willowdale. Boy, we didn't do one for a year and a half, and now we're doing two within 2 weeks. Back again at my place on Fox Bar in Midtown, just Avenue Road in St. Clair. This is going to be a short one. I won't ramble like I did in the last one. A lot of people were kind of interested in the last video because it's very topical. What's going on in the Middle East and obviously Ukraine. I'm not going to belabor the Middle East situation much, but I wanted sort of some points that came up after I did that video, which was pretty cynical and sarcastic about the situation, and I haven't changed my tune on that. But it's becoming clear that it's going to remain a mess for a long time. The Israeli government under Netanyahu is not going to make any concessions to the Palestinians, and the Americans, the Biden administration, isn't really going to pressure Israel. They might be annoyed at Netanyahu. They might be totally pissed off at him, as many American presidents have been at Netanyahu. He is probably one of the least popular world leaders, and has been for a long time, given his tenure as prime minister. You know, he's come and gone so many times. He's definitely a survivor, and he knows that prolonging this war will keep him out of jail and prime minister. I mean, the guy's craven and vicious, and everyone knows it. But the Americans are not going to abandon him, and the aid will continue to flow, and Palestinians will continue to die in Gaza. It's what's it, probably upwards of about 30,000 now, Cleve? It's pretty high, right?
It might be lower than 30,000,
Yeah.
but 30,000.
Yeah. And Canada, my friend Derek's been sending me stuff. Canada is very complicit in this campaign in Gaza too, with lots of military components and stuff used by the Israelis in Gaza come from Canada, and we're willingly sending this stuff to Israel. So Canada's definitely complicit in the slaughter. Going back to my point of 2 weeks back, nothing good will come out of it for the Palestinians. They will not get any justice in the foreseeable future. They will continue to live this nasty existence, whether in Gaza or the West Bank. And the world will move on, as we said in the last video. The dogs bark, the drums roll, the caravan moves on. Israel will continue to live this kind of weird existential existence where they are hated by most countries in the world. And they'll never have any sort of security. And the point I want to make, which I didn't make in the last video, was, and this is really important, just like the Americans don't want gun control, right? So they live with mass shootings. I think 49 mass shootings so far this year. Look at what happened in Kansas City with the Super Bowl parade. I mean, people come out to celebrate something joyous, and there's a shooting. Americans don't want gun control, so they're willing to live with a certain amount of violence in their society. So mass shootings every week or so. Kids being shot in school. Americans are willing to tolerate that because they don't want gun control. Not all Americans. A lot of Americans want gun control, but the people in power don't want gun control. So you're going to have gun violence and mass shootings all the time. But as a society, Americans decided they're willing to live with that. So they're willing to live with that because they don't want meaningful controls on guns. It's very bizarre.
Why is that? Why don't they want?
I don't know why that is, Khalid. No other country in the world has this. Certainly not in the Western or industrialized world. Um, Goes back bizarrely. The Second Amendment goes back to the founding of America, and that's the Second Amendment was about militias and defending against a possible British attack on America, on the new republic. And so that's what it goes back to the 1780s, 1790s, where they were worried that the Brits would try to recolonize America. So they formed these militias, and the Second Amendment comes out of that. People can arm themselves to defend themselves against the British.
The King of England.
Yeah, but we're talking, that was, how long ago?
200.
200, well over 200, 300, 1780s, 1790s, yeah, well over 200 years ago. So it's a bizarre, the Second Amendment is very bizarre in how it's interpreted today. I mean, there's no reason for Americans to arm themselves the way they are today. It's not the 1780s or 1790s, and the British aren't going to invade. But Americans are willing to live with a certain amount of violence because they don't want serious gun control. And so that goes to the point I want to make about Israel. Israelis are willing to live with terrorism and violence because they don't want to do any justice for the Palestinians. Not all Israelis, but the people in power. So Israel's society, just like America as a society, is willing to live with a certain amount of violence and terrorism because they don't want to do any justice for the Palestinians. They don't want to give them their own state. They don't want to make life easier for them. So there will be terrorism and there will be violence, and the Israelis are willing to accept that because they don't want to give the Palestinians any justice. So, as I said in the last video, this will go on and on and on. It's been going on for 100 years, well before the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948. And as I said in the last video, this is a great book, 100 Years War in Palestine by Rashid Khalidi, who teaches at Columbia in New York. And this is also a good book. I don't really like Edward Said. He never did. He's passed away many years ago. But this is also a good book, Orientalism, well worth reading. So the violence, the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians will go on and on and on. And everyone talks about a turning point. This is a turning point. We're so tired of turning points and inflection points. Camp David was a turning point, and it was to a degree that Israel got its first peace treaty with Egypt, and God bless Jimmy Carter for doing that, and thank God Jimmy Carter's still with us at 99 years of age. Yeah, Camp David was significant because Israel got a peace treaty with Egypt, and that's somewhat stabilized the region. And you got to thank Jimmy Carter for negotiating that. I was in Israel when Jimmy Carter. I remember I was in Israel. I was in Jerusalem. Jimmy Carter was there tying up all the loose ends of the Camp David Accord. I remember our British Airways 707 parked right beside Air Force One. Another 707 back in the day. It was very cool. So I wanted to make this a short video. So Israel, this war will go on. This is not a turning point, what's going on in Gaza. As I said, the violence will subside. Palestinians will get nothing, and they'll continue to live in this sort of weird existence, this Bantustan, apartheid existence. And Israel will continue to live this dysfunctional future, successfully economically, a relatively vibrant society, socially tolerant, but a society that in some ways is at war with itself. It doesn't have secure neighbors, secure borders, and it'll always be an outlier on the world stage. Israel is one of the most hated countries in the world. Not totally fair, given that there's a lot of nasty countries in the world, and Israel is somewhat democratic for the people who live there. But Israel will continue to live this weird sort of dysfunctional existence, and the Palestinians will unfortunately live this horrible existence under Israeli occupation. The Israelis can make it much easier for the Palestinians by loosening up all the checkpoints in the West Bank, making their lives easier, but they don't want to do that. So, going back to what I said at the beginning, they're willing to live with a certain level of terrorism and violence because they don't want to give the Palestinians any justice. I've always believed in a one-state solution, Israel and Palestine, one country. That's not going to happen, but I still think that's the best solution. I'm a big fan of multi-ethnic, diverse countries like Canada and the United States and Britain.
And Canada's also guilty of ethnic cleansing, so.
Oh yeah, Canada has its own nasty past. So, which we're living up to, right? I mean,
well, we're living up to it a bit too much, if you ask me.
Yeah, I think it's a.
I mean, Trudeau's,
It's a bit over the top too. Yeah, Sometimes I do think of some of this apologizing and all this stuff and all this land acknowledgement stuff. It's at every public meeting in Canada. You have this land acknowledgement, which is crap. It's cheap tokenism. It's just people just feeling guilty, and it's just crap. It's
and kind of showing off to other people too.
Yeah.
Look how pure I am, right? Look
exactly.
Yeah.
I have no time for that land acknowledgement stuff. It's time to move on.
Well said.
Yeah, indigenous claims and stuff are being dealt with. The injustices are being dealt with. This cabinet here has all the Aboriginal inquiries. Oh my God, books and books and books. Just fulfill some of the recommendations in these inquiries, and you'll have a better society. But that's for another time, another video. The war in the Middle East will continue. It'll subside, but the violence and the hatred will go on, and it's an intractable mess. And there's no, I don't see any possible good outcomes coming out of this. All the turning points and inflection points, Oslo, the Intifadas, all that stuff. How many turning points have we had and inflection points? Nothing, it amounts to nothing. Okay, so moving on from that intractable mess, and the world is a mess, okay? I said in the last video, 6 million people have died in the eastern Congo and nobody cares. There's been a civil war going on there for decades. Genocide against the Uyghurs in northwest China, this horrible mess in Yemen, even our border, Mexico is a country run by drug cartels. Tons of instability in South America. Indonesia is about to elect a thug and a murderer as their next leader. The world's not a nice place. So yes, the Palestinians have gotten no justice, but neither have the Kurds, neither have a lot of people. Well, at least the Kurds have a semi-autonomous existence in northern Iraq, and they're doing quite well, so that's good. Another story we talked about in the last video, Ukraine. More and more and more, Putin, he just killed Navalny the other day. He did murder him, basically. Putin's a thug, but I think at some point the Russians are realizing they're not going to win Ukraine. They're not going to take over the whole country. They're going to need a compromise. And the Ukrainians have got to realize that they're not going to win this, and they need a compromise too. So Russia, unfortunately, we were rewarded for its aggression, which is horrible, but the best thing for Ukraine is to get out of this. There's an armistice, an end to hostilities. I think Russia will hold on to Crimea and the Donbass region, but there'll be an end to hostilities. Ukraine will join the European Union and NATO, and that'll piss the Russians off, but that'll be good. Ukraine will become a thriving society, just like South Korea became a thriving society. And Russia will be an isolated, kind of despotic place for many years. But yes, an armistice like what happened in the Koreas in July of '53. Don't forget, Korea is still at war. Two Koreas are still at war. So, but there's an armistice, and South Korea prospered, and North Korea is a dump. And that's sort of an update to our last video. I've repeated a few extra points, but we could talk more about Canadian politics and stuff, but we'll do that in another video. I just wanted to re-emphasize a few of the big conflicts going on in the world. It's a messy place. The U.S. is a very messy place. We don't know what's going to go on there.
Well, all I know is I love those new sneakers. I want a pair so bad.
What sneakers?
The Trump sneakers.
The Trump sneaker. Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. I really want a pair. They're pure gold too. Like, I mean, jeez.
Well, Trump is a real piece of work, no question. And as our friend Andrew says, he speaks to things that people don't dare speak. So this thing about NATO, though, is ridiculous. I wish we didn't need these military alliances. But encouraging Russia to attack countries in Europe is pretty pathetic, pretty despicable. And the fact that he gets away with it, in the sense that Republicans still support him, is incredible. It's amazing how the Republican Party has become a cult of him. It's absolutely amazing. And who knows what's going to happen in this year's elections. I wish Biden had stepped down. I mean, he might still. He's done a good job. He's actually done a good job. He should have stepped down. There's lots of smart people in the Democratic Party that be a good nominee. So, but that's for another video. This video will end. A lot of good this issue of Foreign Affairs too. January, February. Yeah, a lot of good articles in it. That's worth picking up. And these two books, obviously, Rashid Khalid's and Orientalism, still out there on the bookshelves. 100-Year War in Palestine and Orientalism, classic by Edward Said, guy I generally didn't like, and he's passed away, but still a classic. Oh no, that's it. That's it from Late Night from Willowdale.
Okay.
All right, that wasn't bad, eh?
No, it's still rolling. Hold on.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah, hold on.